Mike has agreed to take some questions, and so I ask if you could raise your hand. I think a microphone will be brought to you. If you could introduce yourself so that Mike knows who he's responding to, that would be great. He answered all the questions. There you go.
Best Steve guy has a question.
Somebody has to start this. I know this audience must have lots of questions. Thank you very much. I'm not sure it's on. Push the button. Ah, there we are.
Yeah? Yes.
Thank you. So somebody has to start.
Do you want to identify yourself?
Thank you. Let's not go there. Mike, thank you very much for being here. It's great to have you. I'm sorry we haven't hounded and pestered you enough for previous summits. So we've developed what we call our 21st century issues. And that was the focus of last year's summit. One of those issues is freedom of data flows, the other is forced localization, and the third one is state-owned enterprise. I'd like to go to the forced localization one, where we have situations in which our companies doing business in Africa, where you've recently been, and elsewhere in the world face much more determined efforts to acquire services companies to hire local and buy local, use local equipment. In some cases, directly contrary to their WTO commitments. So I'm wondering if the administration is developing or has developed a strategy for that sort of issue, which is a very broad one. It covers a lot of sins, the idea of forced localization. In fact, Laura Lane, when she was at Citi, helped us develop the concept. So I guess that's my question, and I hope it spurs some other ones.
Country after another, efforts to create either local content or localization rules that do exactly as you say and impede the normal flow of trade and investment. I think this is something that's very high on our agenda. We're actually doing some work internally. We have an interagency task force that's looking at this. And I think if we have conversations with countries about it, frankly, they all make clear that it's not necessarily directed at the U.S. as much as it is against other countries, and they're concerned about the flood of imports from other countries. But they want partnerships with the U.S. and U.S. companies, and they understand that the way to have those partnerships are on a market basis in a way that makes sense for both parties. So I think we have some work to do in helping other countries understand that there are other ways to build their own manufacturing and services sectors other than forcing localization and local content requirements. And that by going down the road of localization or local content requirements, it could actually be self-defeating because they could end up producing less than an optimal sector for them.
Alan Wolf, Chairman of the National Foreign Trade Council. Following up on the identified prior speaker's third item, and that was state-owned enterprises. State-owned enterprises clearly are a high priority issue for this administration. The President has emphasized that, the Secretary of State has, as has the Secretary of the Treasury and others. It's an important issue for the Congress. Do you get some resonance, some feedback from other countries, trade negotiators and others, that it's an issue that they see as important for 21st century architecture?
We do, and obviously it's a key part of what we're looking at in the context of the TPP and the competition chapter of the TPP. Yeah, I think a number of countries are getting their arms around what the issue is and what the disciplines are that we can all agree to. Our goal is to level the playing field. Every country has state-owned enterprises of some sort or another. We're not going to eliminate them. Our goal is to ensure that if they operate in the marketplace, that they're operating as market-based, commercial-oriented enterprises, and that they're not benefiting from subsidies or regulatory forbearance or other mechanisms that would give them an unfair advantage and create an unlevel playing field. So it's a complex issue. We're having good dialogue with our TPP partners about it, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to negotiate a set of disciplines around that that very much gets at that issue.
Thanks, Froman. Thanks, Gary Alfaro with Peter Institute. Assuming that President Obama is reelected for those three initiatives you mentioned, transatlantic, trans-Pacific, and ISA, would you expect new trade promotion authority, maybe with a new name, to be a high priority in 2013 for the administration?
I think I will take the route of saying, let's wait till we get to 2013. We will certainly consult closely with Congress about how best to proceed on all of these fronts. I think we're making good progress in these negotiations. We have Michael Punk here who's leading the charge on ISA. I think we're making good progress on each of these, in each of these areas, and whether or not or when we might need trade promotion authority, I think is one of those issues. We'll wait until we're past the election and we have a new Congress to deal with.
I'm Mike Mullen. I'm the Executive Director of the Express Association of America. And maybe as a follow-on to that question, could you comment more generally on how you feel the administration's relations are with Congress on trade issues? There's been some congressmen complaining recently about the transparency of the TPP process, but how do you feel it's going overall in that negotiation?
I think we have a very good relationship, particularly with the relevant committees, the Ways and Means and Finance committees, the Agriculture committees on those issues, banking committees on financial services issues. So I think we have a very good relationship. We are in constant dialogue with members of Congress and their staff on the issues. And with regard to TPP, on transparency, I'd only say I think this has been one of the most open and transparent processes of any trade agreement ever. And we have structured it, and some of our TPP partners have seen this. We've structured it so that stakeholders come to the rounds, have an opportunity to present to the negotiators. I think we had over 400 stakeholders at our most recent round. We've got obviously extensive consultations with our advisory committees, with the cleared advisors on the particular text, and with our relevant committees. So we have been there's been an awful lot of consultation with all the interested stakeholders. I think we've been quite open and transparent about what we're doing.
I'm going to just ask one question. Great things come from public-private partnership, and when the business community teamed up with the administration as well as other stakeholders to talk about the benefits of trade, to get the passage of the Korea-Columbia and Panama agreements, we were able to accomplish the great goal of turning people around and recognizing the value of trade. What do we need to be doing to advance the agenda forward? What can the business community do to support the ISA, to continue supporting the TPP talks, to support the Trans-Pacific Partnership discussions and the Transatlantic Partnership discussions? Where can we be playing a bigger role to help advance that agenda?
Well, that's a good question, Laura. Laura's been so involved in those campaigns to get the FTAs through. We're so grateful for all the work that she and her colleagues have done. I think in the short run, the nearest term issue with regard to Congress is PNTR, and continuing to underscore, at least the message we're going to be sending is that this isn't a gift to Russia. This is about whether U.S. firms will benefit from the commitments that Russia has made, or whether they'll be put at a competitive disadvantage to the Europeans, the Chinese, and others who now have access to the Russian market and access to dispute resolution and the other things that come along with WTO accession. I think longer term, there is still a lot of work to be done with Congress and with the public more generally on the benefits of trade. And we all know that trade is one of those things that is great for the economy as a whole, but there are always sectors that are more or less affected by any trade agreement. And it's important that members of Congress and their supporters understand how much is at stake in their individual constituencies and in their states because of the globalization of the economy. There's a great study that Brookings did on the 100 top metropolitan areas and how much those metropolitan areas are dependent on trade or related to exports. And it's a very useful exercise. And we sit down with a member of Congress who may be predisposed against trade agreements, and you show that 17% of their workforce work in export-related businesses. And here are the companies who are employing people in their district who are related, whose livelihood is tied to exports. It's very important, but there's a lot of retail work that needs to be done still to bring people up to speed on the importance of trade. Now, on our side, the Obama administration's approach has been we very much want to move forward with trade liberalization, and we want to do it in the right way. And that means making sure the standards are high, making sure it reflects our values. It's why we put as much emphasis as we have on labor and environment, on SOEs, on leveling the playing field, on any number of regulatory coherence, et cetera, because we want to make sure that we're addressing the concerns that domestic constituencies make. Education effort to do as well, but I'm convinced that when we bring TPP back for congressional approval, and for whatever we do with the European Union or for ISA, these are going to be strong agreements. They're going to reflect U.S. interests, but also U.S. values, and then the challenge will be making sure that members of Congress fully appreciate all that it does for the U.S. economy.
Yes? There you go. Yeah. Mike, I'm Bill Tippett of the Promontory Financial Group. I'd like to take you to the point where trade meets financial regulation. And as you know, there are a lot of initiatives globally to make financial regulation consistent. So one I'm familiar with myself is the International Association of Insurance Supervisors has a common framework that they're developing to regulate internationally active insurance groups. Can you comment on how you see the relationship between those initiatives and trade agreements like the International Services Agreement? Do you see them as supportive of each other? Do you see them as unrelated to each other, inconsistent with each other? Thanks.
I think coming out of the financial crisis of 08-09, we saw this through the G20, there is widespread consensus of the need to both raise the standards of financial services regulation across the board and to make them as consistent and as coherent as possible. And the approach we've taken in the G20, our colleagues at the Treasury Department who've been leading this effort with the various regulatory bodies, the Basel Committee, the FSB, and others. The goal has been to set certain standards through and certain objectives through the G20 and then through these bodies, and then make sure that they are implemented as consistently as possible from one jurisdiction to another. So I think the objective has been prudential regulation, making sure that we're not going to replicate the crises of the past. That's been the primary objective. But in trying to achieve some degree of consistency throughout, at least in terms of the overall principles, we've also tried to make sure that regulation wasn't used as an excuse for trade barriers, for trade protectionism. So I think these things are mutually supportive, and there's a lot of coordination that goes on between the USTR and the Treasury Department when it comes to financial services regulation. They're obviously going down different paths at the moment, but I think they are mutually supportive.
Hi, Anna Cocelli with MetLife. This question is mine. I promise it's not Mark's, even though we're right next to each other. With regards to the USEU high-level working group, I was wondering how do you put together the need for ambition and also doing it in sort of a relatively short time frame? How does that come together in your mind?
I think we just have to make Mark work harder. Look, I think the good Peter Allgeier and I were we're talking about this at lunch. You guys have snagged a very qualified executive to run CSI for you. The differences, the obstacles in our trade relationship, the barriers in our trade relationship are well known. They're not new. We all know what the issues are. So to me, the reason I think we can do this quickly, one tank of gas, while being ambitious, is because, one, we have a very deep relationship. We have a very close relationship between individuals on both sides. But we also know where the bodies are buried, where the obstacles are, and how to resolve them. And the only question is whether there's the political will on both sides to do so. And that's the exercise we're going through now, is to identify where the difficult issues are and whether we think we have support on each side to address them.
Please join me in thanking Mike Froman. And I think we'll be moving to the next session, but the voice of God will tell us.